Okay, It's My Life by Naomi Achu. And of course, we want to say that the people of South Africa are still living. They still have life in them because life goes on despite whatever thing happens. I'm talking about something that has happened. We hear a top brass in South Africa has just thrown in the towel. There is a big resignation from that country. And so what is happening down south? Solomon Atah is on the line. Solomon, welcome to African Cocktail, and tell us just what is happening down there in South Africa. Who has resigned, Solomon?
Thank you, Ernest. Welcome to you and your listeners to Johannesburg, the city of gold. Ernest, indeed, there has been big news reported here by papers and carried by the national TV stations here and other international stations as well. Our IEC person, the lady that is in charge of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, has resigned, and this is following the fact that prior to the May 7 election of 2014, there was a public protector report that found that there was maladministration in the acquisition of the current IEC headquarters. This led to several opposition parties in Parliament asking her to resign. She resisted, and she was later dragged to court, and the court has now dismissed her further appeals. And yesterday the bombshell dropped, and she had to resign.
Wow. Solomon, still talking about court decisions, we hear the official opposition has just won a Supreme Court case against President Zuma, and we hear the case refers to the so-called spy tapes which led to corruption charges being dropped against President Zuma in 2009. Could you tell us more about that, Solomon?
Yes, and indeed, that happens at the Supreme Court of Appeals in Bloemfontein, which is a judiciary headquarters of South Africa. And South Africa has three headquarters: the political headquarters in Pretoria, the legislative headquarters in Cape Town, where the Parliament is, and the judiciary headquarters is in Bloemfontein. So 10 or so days ago, the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, led by its leader, Helen Zille, who is also the Premier of the Western Cape, were at the court where the case, because they had initially won that particular case, and it's referring to the spy tapes saga in earlier courts, but there was an appeal that was launched by the lawyers of President Jacob Zuma. But the case was thrown out of court, dismissed with cost, meaning that the lawyers of President Jacob Zuma or President Jacob Zuma has to pay the cost of that appeal to the Democratic Alliance. So, and that case has been thrown out. Analysts are split with mixed reactions about this, because some saying that perhaps this just opens the door for the 700 or so corruption charges to be reinstated against President Jacob Zuma. So, and that is like a really piece of big news that broke a couple of days ago. And now there was also the Supreme Court has asked a certain retired judge to be able to scan through what is now known as the spy tapes to see what is understood as confidential, and it's now up to that judge to hand over to determine which of these material needs to be added out to the Democratic Alliance, which is also the official opposition in Parliament.
Wow. Now, Solomon, Lesotho is that a small country which is encircled by South Africa. In fact, Lesotho is found in South Africa, and we hear people may not be having sleep for the next couple of weeks or months because there has been an attempted coup in that country, and urgent meetings are being held in Pretoria to look into the situation. Solomon, could you just throw more light on that?
Yes, and that is a sad news. I must remind you and your listeners that Lesotho is a small mountain country, actually a kingdom, which is surrounded all around its borders by the Republic of South Africa. There was a coup that happened there in the late hours of Saturday and the early hours of Sunday, and the Prime Minister Thomas Tabane has now exiled himself in South Africa. There were urgent meetings that were convened at the Union Building, that is the official office of the President of South Africa, which looked into discussing some of the trying to find some kind of resolutions around that coup that is now taking place. Although the Lesothian military is saying that no, they haven't seized power, but the fact that the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are now in South Africa, and in an earlier interview with an international broadcaster, he mentioned that he will not be going back home until he can determine that he will not be killed. So as a matter of fact, it is a jittery situation in Maseru, because the coup is actually in effect, and reports today, about 2 or so hours ago, reported that the situation has now deteriorated. So we are keeping a very, very close eye on that one and keeping our ear to the ground, and I will be updating you as far as if we hear any further developments.
Now, keeping our eyes open and hoping that the situation is going to be better than what we have now. Now, Solomon, Big Brother Africa is definitely one of the most famous TV reality shows, not only in South Africa, but on the entire continent. And we hear the studio where that show is produced has been engulfed by flames, and which has caused season 9 of Big Brother Africa to be suspended.
Yes, indeed, that is a sad news. In fact, that was that particular show, the Big Brother Africa show, has launched many an entertainment career for youth in Africa. And it was unfortunate that the news media reported a fire at the Sesani studios where the show is filmed and broadcast live across the continent. For now, they reported that the show has now been postponed, not indefinitely, but till further notice, because the show was meant to start airing on Sunday, the 7th of September. So, and again, this is a very important or very popular show as far as reality television on the continent is concerned. And in fact, it would be understood that most of the contestants from 14 African countries were already here in South Africa. And now that the show has now been put on hold, I think until the studio has been repaired, again, we will be following up updates. The fire took place during the breaking hours of Sunday, so we will be keeping an eye on that one, and we'll be giving you all the feedback that would have emerged from that, Ernest.
Definitely, Solomon. So, how do the markets look like, Solomon?
Ernest, I'm just going to take you quickly across the African currency. The rand and naira, you will need 15 naira and 18 cents to buy 1 rand. You will need 83 Botswanan dollar to buy 1 rand. You will need at least 8 cents, 30 Kenyan shillings for 1 rand. And Egypt pound is costing, you have to at least have 67 Egyptian pound to get 1 rand. So, and as one of very stronger currencies on the continent, the Ghanaian cedi will cost you just about 35. 1 rand will cost you just about 35 Ghanaian cents. And the cedi has actually strengthened, and as I should mention, this year across several currencies on the continent. Quickly, and let's look at the metals. Gold is trading at $1,260.49. Platinum is at $1,412 an ounce, and then oil, the Brent crude is traded at $100.35 a barrel, and the JSE closing just under 51,800. And as the weather in Johannesburg is wonderful, it was not a cloud in the sky type of day, and it was warm. And I shall be speaking to you again next week on African Cocktail, and this has been Solomon Atah in the City of Gold in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Solomon Atah in the City of Gold in Johannesburg, South Africa. Quite a brilliant report there with that breaking news of the resignation of the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. Solomon, thank you so much. We hope to be with you again next week for yet another rich package from that end. And in something like 2 minutes, we shall be running off this edition of African Cocktail. Time for me to start voting thanks, and we want to say thank you so much to Fati Keita, a Guinean actress who talked to us from Maryland. We also want to thank you so much, Ifana Kuala, our reporter in Cameroon. For some reasons, we didn't have our main guest, and of course, Baby Black. Black Baby is a Cameroonian singer, but he shall be back next week on this show. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll be right back to run off this edition of African Cocktail.